my name is Lolita Guarin, and I'm a stress management coach and expert and wrote some other books, but I was extremely honored to be featured in this book. So today I'm going to read my chapter 10, and it is called Let Go of a Hot Coal. Learn how to forgive yourself and others with ease. My story. I could hear a commotion outside the door. My dog, excited, jumping up and down, wagging his tail, barking impatiently, hurrying someone up to come in. The door should be open by now, but all I hear is the key looking for the lock, circling around, scratching the door. I looked at the clock, and my heart jumped. The time of the day my dad came home would be perfect. What kind of state he will be in. If he came home at 3 p.m., that meant he was sober. If he came around 7 p.m., he was too drunk to argue and went right to bed. If he didn't show up by 9, that meant he wouldn't be coming home at all that night. But it was 4 p.m., which means you'll have no idea what state he's in. I knew for sure that he wouldn't drunk enough to go to bed. That meant, depending on his mood, he could be very happy, making jokes, talking for 2 hours, or just annoyed with me, yelling, banging the table with his fist, and violent. I don't wait until he finds the lock. I rush to the door open to find him. He stumbles in, and my dog is so excited to see him. I serve him dinner. He eats slowly, murmuring some story that I must listen to, Most of the time, I have no idea what he's talking about, but I can't leave the kitchen, or he will be angry at me and that nobody's listening to him. He pauses as he chews. He looks through the window into the distance like he's thinking about something very important, then agrees with himself, nodding his head. I watch him eat, and if I'm lucky that day, he'll go to sleep before my mom comes back home from work. For now, I will need to hear them arguing about him being drunk again, but then at least I can leave the kitchen and listen to them from my room until my dog escorts my dad to bed. Having an alcoholic father was not a novelty in Lithuania, where I'm from. Many people, fathers and mothers, drink often. It was not easy to survive in Soviet Union, but we all did the best we could. Every day brought uncertainty. I hated to go home after school fretting about waiting on my dad to come home. Sometimes I had to swallow the embarrassment and fetch him from the street where he had passed out drunk, and sometimes I would watch him breaking things, fearing for my life. Many times I would have a conversation, acting like all was well and laughing at his jokes. He never hit me, but all the time I felt terrified. That's how I grew up, in constant fear. As I'm telling you this, remembering those days, my heart clenches, and it's hard for me to breathe. But last time I saw my dad drunk was 20 years ago, and we were not in Lithuania anymore, but it sure feels like yesterday. When I was a kid, I promised myself I would never leave home, take my mom with me, and never talk to my dad again when I grew up. I would never look back. But I was wrong. My dad's still in my life, but now he is sober. For many years, I felt anger towards my dad for causing me and my mom to suffer. And at the same time, I was angry at myself that I couldn't do anything to change things. I couldn't even stand up for myself. I felt betrayed by the person who should be watching over me, who should support me, protect me, and make me feel safe. But my dad was the terror in the house. I have no idea what people meant by saying, "Oh, she's a daddy girl." How do you forgive those things that hurt you? How do you forgive yourself for letting them hurt you? I'm sure you heard before that holding on to anger towards another is like holding a hot coal in your hands. Hoping that the other person's hands will burn. But in the end, you're the one who gets burned. You're still holding on a while for the other person lives their life as if nothing happened. Forgiveness is a complicated process where someone who has been hurt chooses to release themselves from the hurt and resentment towards the person who hurt them. Men resist forgiveness because it feels like if we forgive, we'll let the wrongdoer behavior just be justified or accepted. That is why I couldn't forgive my father for a very long time. It would make me very angry to think about the pain he caused my mother and me. When I started the journey of healing my soul, I read many books about self-development, trying to understand what was wrong with me. How come other people can be happy and I can't? Why am I feeling fearful all the time and I can't relax? Why do I have such a low self-esteem and can't finish things? I remember one day I was reading a book about how to run business, and the author mentioned in her story how she struggled with anger, guilt, and low self-esteem due to being an adult child of an alcoholic. The concept was very new to me. I immediately picked up a book on that topic that she had recommended and finished within days. I couldn't believe my own eyes. I was reading about myself. Suddenly I understood that there was nothing wrong with me. I'm not a freak, not a cracked saucer in a perfect set. I realized I'd experienced childhood trauma, as many of us have. The reality is that it's nearly impossible to live on this planet and never experience traumas. Some can be big, some can be small, but they are still there. The key is to learn from them, grow from them, and not be broken by them. As I was reading about how children who are experiencing traumas adjust to survive, I learned that some grew up being adaptive by changing their behavior, healing. Some become very resilient and narcissistic to survive. And some just break, can't handle the pain, and turn into different substances and destructive behaviors to run away from pain and trying to numb their emotions. And since nobody ever taught them how to deal with those emotions and pain, they keep hurting themselves and others on their path. And that is what it hit me. Why my dad was an alcoholic. It was not by choice. He didn't wake up one day and said to himself, I will be an alcoholic and I hurt the people that I love and must because that is fun. I realized that his own family emotionally abandoned him from an early age. They always disapproved of him and made him feel incompetent, no matter how good he tried to be. He was always given the least attention and had to take care of younger siblings. His parents gave attention and support to the younger siblings and not to him, since he was managing on his own. All children need safety, support, and nourishment. And not all children get it, because I believe all families are dysfunctional in their own way. And so it goes, from generation to generation. Many grew up feeling lonely and abandoned, and then haven't raised their own children while feeling like isolated and misunderstood toddlers inside. And since nobody ever taught them how to deal with emotions and processing trauma, they can reach healing process to their children. Our analytical mind assigns meaning to everything to explain the world and feel safe. We can interpret someone's behavior as against it, but in the same way, we can explain that behavior as something that has nothing to do with us. As soon as we stop thinking of hurt as something personal done to us, we can move on. But of course, it is challenging to do that when we try to forgive the person responsible for nurturing and protecting us in the first place. The only way to move on is to recognize what happened, accept it, reframe it, understand it, and forgive. I made a decision that day to forgive myself and my father. I understood that he wasn't hurting me and my mother on purpose. He just didn't know how to handle his pain. It's your turn now. I'm inviting you to be courageous and release the hot coal you are still holding. It is time. The tool. I want to share a tool with you that will help you release the anger that keeps on burning inside your heart, keeping you away from peace and freedom. It may be a straightforward tool or very difficult to implement. It all depends on you. And remember, to forgive doesn't mean to forget or approve of that kind of behavior. Don't get intimidated by this process. Try a few times if you don't get enough courage to do it at once. Be patient with yourself. Give yourself time and move forward one day at a time. Trust me, it will be worth it. But like any tool, the key to success is in using it. Step 1. Acknowledge the feelings. Allow yourself to feel the pain, the suffering, the hurt, the anger, despair, disappointment. Permit yourself to feel what comes up. It can be challenging to face that due to hurt and that you burned inside. The pain can be still fresh, an open wound, or cold like an ugly infected scar. It takes courage to face it, so give yourself credit. Remember, what you resist, persist. The hardest part is recognizing the facing the anger, the hurt, and all of those feelings you want to run away from. So you must say with yourself, you need to stay inside, honoring your feelings, because there is nothing worse than to abandon yourself at the moment when you need your support the most, as you were abandoned by the people who are supposed to take care of you. You may even feel guilty that you feel guilty of those who hurt you, especially if they're family members or people close to you. You may even feel it is a virtue to sacrifice yourself and your well-being for others, but it doesn't give you peace. You feel violated, abandoned, and mistreated. Find a place and time where you won't be disturbed by anybody else. Create a safe place for yourself and just be. If you don't feel like being yourself, then by yourself, then just ask a friend, a very close of yours, who could be with you and you can trust to be with you while you're going through the process. Someone who you can talk to, call on, or write. Excuse me. Step 2. Name your feelings. Take time to take a piece of paper and a pen or a notebook, or you can take your diary and write how that person who hurt you makes you feel. Kind of like writing a letter to them. This is the time to face your feelings and name them. For example, write, I feel angry, disappointed, etc. It's been proven that acknowledged and named negative emotions become less painful because they become separate from you. They are not a part of you that can hurt you or control you anymore. Write a letter and get all your feelings out and place it in an envelope. Imagine sending the envelope. If you feel good about it, you're welcome to send that letter to the person who hurt you so they read and see how that made you feel. If you don't feel comfortable with the person reading it, you can even throw it into the trash or just say burn it and send it. If you don't feel like writing a letter, you can imagine talking to the person. Close your eyes and see the person coming to the room where you are. If you feel comfortable, imagine them sitting in front of you. Tell them how you feel. If you can talk out loud, do that. Talk as long as you want to. Yell, shout, bang a hand on the table. Let it all out. Just make sure you don't hurt yourself or others in the process. Step 3. Set it from the other point of view. Any situation can have a different meaning if seen from a different perspective. Get into the other person's shoes by trying to figure out the reasoning behind the behavior. It may be difficult, but try. I remember a great story about a driver that stopped behind another car at the intersection. As the green light came on, the first car was moving forward. More than that, the woman came out of the driver's seat, opened the passenger seat in the back, and started looking for something. The driver behind her got very annoyed and started shouting at the woman to move. As it turned out, her toddler in the back seat started choking, so she jumped out of the car to help him. Everyone would have done the same thing if that was their child. The driver felt stupid for yelling at her after he found out the truth. Most of our behavior is based on self-preservation and survival, even if it hurts others. Ask yourself, what's their reality? What kind of family did they grow up in? What circumstances made them behave in a way they hurt you? I believe that only hurt people hurt others because they don't know how to handle their pain. So, by hurting others, they feel in control of their situation, especially if they feel no control over their surroundings. Many don't even know they are hurting someone. Many soothe themselves with alcohol, drugs, or destructive behavior. Remember, we handle the situation the way we know how to. Much of the behaviors we learn from family members, and behavior lasts from one generation to the next. Step 4. Let it go. You must be hurt that you can't explain why the person would hurt you that way, but you still can decide to forgive them because you are ready to move on. That is the time to write again. You can write by hand or type on your computer. Write another letter of forgiveness to yourself for being hurt, ashamed of your feelings, and not being there for you. Remember, you did the best you could with what you knew and what you could do. Write the last letter to the other person for hurting you. Make a decision, an intention to forgive them and let it go. If you started this process, not by writing, but by talking with the person in your imagination, you could continue the process by talking to them. Imagine telling them you forgive them and letting them and yourself go free. Imagine that person leaving the room. I hope you enjoyed this chapter. I hope you can use the tool. And again, remember, get this book for yourself and others. Have a blessed Sunday. Bye.